She sat in her wheelchair by the classroom window, her trembling hands holding a half-open book she'd read 100 times before, not because she loved it, but because it was the only thing that didn't look at her differently. The faint laughter outside echoed through the school halls, sharp and cold, reminding her once again of the life she'd lost. "Move, or should we roll you out of the way?" one of the students sneered that morning. A ripple of laughter followed. She didn't respond. She never did. Rhea had been a teacher, a brilliant, passionate woman who once filled every room with her energy. But after the accident, her world shrank to four wheels and silent stares. The school had kept her out of sympathy, they said, but she knew the truth. She was a burden they tolerated. The humiliation was endless. Whispers followed her in corridors. Some students mocked her trembling hands, others recorded videos to post online, pretending to help while laughing behind her back. Even teachers avoided her, but Rhea endured it all, because this school was her only connection to the world she once belonged to. Her nights were the hardest. She would stare at her reflection, seeing a stranger who couldn't walk, who couldn't dance with her students during the annual fest, who couldn't climb stairs to reach the library she'd once loved. Every time she prayed, she didn't ask for her legs back, she asked for one reason to stay alive. And then, one morning, that reason walked into her classroom, with a mop and a bucket. That he was small, maybe 11 or 12, with curious eyes and clothes a little too big for his thin frame. "Good morning, ma'am," he said shyly, his voice trembling with innocence. She looked up, startled. No one called her ma'am anymore with respect, it was usually mockery or pity. "Good morning," she replied softly. The boy smiled wide, showing a missing front tooth. "My father cleans your classroom. He said you're a good teacher. I wanted to meet you." For the first time in months, Rhea smiled genuinely. He introduced himself as Ariv, the janitor's son. Every morning, while his father cleaned, Ariv would quietly sit by the corner, listening to her lessons. Sometimes, he'd answer questions before her students could. His sharp mind impressed her, but it was his kindness that melted her heart. He didn't see her wheelchair. He saw her. Days turned into weeks, and Ariv became her little helper. He carried her books, arranged her desk, and brought her tea when she forgot to eat. Slowly, the students noticed. Some began to help too, awkwardly at first, then sincerely. Her class felt alive again, but the peace didn't last long. One afternoon, when Rhea was leaving, a group of senior boys blocked her path. "You think just because you sit in that chair, you're special?" one of them sneered. Ariv, who had come to pick up her books, stood between them. "Don't talk to her like that," he yelled. His voice cracked, but his courage didn't. The boys laughed. "Look at this. The janitor's kid playing hero." Before Rhea could react, one of them shoved Ariv, and he fell hard, his knees scraping the floor. Something in her broke. Her eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of rage. "Stop it," she shouted, her voice trembling with years of buried humiliation. The hall went silent. "You think you're better than him because your father wears a suit? He's more human than all of you combined." She turned her wheelchair, lifted Ariv gently, and whispered, "You're brave, my son." The word slipped out naturally. "Son." Ariv looked at her, wide-eyed. "Mom," he whispered, unsure if he'd heard her right. Rhea froze for a moment. Her lips quivered. But then she smiled through tears and nodded. "Yes. Mom." From that day on, something changed in the air. The story spread, about how the paralyzed teacher stood up, not with her legs, but with her heart. How the janitor's son, the boy no one noticed, became her light in the darkness. Ariv started calling her mom every day, even in front of everyone. And she wore that title like a crown. Months passed, and Rhea's classroom became a place of kindness. Students who once mocked her now protected her. The same boys who had humiliated her came forward to apologize. The principal noticed the change too. Discipline improved, attendance rose, and for the first time in years, students began talking about empathy instead of popularity. One afternoon, Rhea sat by the window again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Ariv sat beside her, reading aloud from the same old book. "Ma'am," he said softly, "do you still wish you could walk?" She looked at him, smiled, and said, "No. Because if I hadn't fallen, I would never have met you." Tears rolled down Ariv's cheeks. He hugged her, and in that embrace, every scar she'd carried finally healed. She had found what she'd prayed for, her reason to stay alive. Years later, when Ariv graduated top of his class, he stood on the stage, valedictorian medals shining on his chest. He began his speech with a trembling voice. "Everyone knows me as the janitor's son. But I am also the son of the bravest woman I've ever known, the teacher who taught me that strength isn't about walking, it's about standing up for what's right." The auditorium erupted in applause. Ria watched from the front row, tears of pride streaming down her face. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel paralyzed. She felt powerful. If you felt her story in your heart, if you believe kindness can heal even the deepest wounds, then don't just watch, feel. Click the like button, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that remind us, sometimes, life doesn't take away, it gives us someone who teaches us how to rise again.